Hi everyone, my name is James, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person writing one of these posts. I've read stories on here for years, shaking my head at how cruel or entitled families can be. I always thought to myself, that can't be real, not to that extent. But after what's happened with my own family, I get it. Some people are worse than strangers when it comes to the way they treat you. A little about me first. I'm 27, and for as long as I can remember, I've wanted to run a bakery. Not just bake at home or do it on the side, but really create a place where people could walk in and smell the bread straight out of the oven, see the cakes on display, and feel like they'd stepped into something warm and welcoming. I've spent years saving for it, working long hours, and learning everything I could from local bakers who were kind enough to show me a trick or two. My family, though, let's just say they've never really been supportive. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. My brother Ezra is 31, and my sister Clara is 29. Ezra has always been the golden example, at least in my parents' eyes. He works in finance, makes good money, dresses sharp, and has a way of talking that makes people believe him even when he's exaggerating or flat out lying. Clara is quieter, but she's firmly in Ezra's corner. If Ezra says something, she nods along. Then there's me. To them, I was always the one with silly hobbies. When I was a kid and wanted to bake instead of playing soccer, Dad would sigh and say, "Not everything in life is about fun, James. You need to think about stability." Mom wasn't as harsh, but she'd still add little comments like, "That's nice, but you'll outgrow it." Spoiler, I never did. Anyway, after years of saving and planning, I finally signed a lease for a small but perfect corner spot in town. It used to be a flower shop, and the layout was cozy with big front windows. I put everything I had into renovating it, painting the walls, buying equipment, and designing the logo. The name of my bakery is Morning Rise. Simple, but it felt right. When I sent out the invitations for the grand opening, I'll admit I was nervous. I worked hard to get the place ready in time, testing recipes, arranging seating, even hand-painting little signs for each pastry. I wanted it to feel special. Of course, the most important thing to me was having my family there. Even after years of being dismissed, some part of me thought, maybe this time they'll see what I've accomplished. Maybe they'll be proud. The day before the opening, I texted our family group chat to remind everyone. Ezra didn't respond, which wasn't unusual. He tends to ignore me unless he wants something. Clara just sent a thumbs-up emoji, and my parents said, "We'll see." That phrase, "we'll see," has been the soundtrack of my life. It's never a yes, never commitment, just that lukewarm maybe. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. I woke up at 4 a.m. the day of the grand opening to start baking. By 7 a.m., the place smelled amazing. Fresh cinnamon rolls, croissants, loaves of sourdough. I even made a special cake just in case my family came. The first customers trickled in around 8, and by noon, I actually had a small crowd. Strangers were complimenting me, telling me how much they loved the atmosphere. Some even asked if I was hiring. I should have been on top of the world, but I kept glancing at the door. Every time it opened, my heart jumped, thinking maybe it was Mom and Dad, or maybe Ezra would surprise me, or Clara would stop by. Hour after hour passed, and nothing. Not a single familiar face. By late afternoon, when the rush had died down, I checked my phone. That's when I saw a photo in the family group chat. Ezra standing on a stage, holding a framed certificate, with my entire family smiling around him. They were at his promotion party. Apparently, he'd been promoted to senior regional manager or something along those lines. The caption under the photo, from my mom, read, "So proud of you, Ezra. You've made us all so happy today." I don't think I've ever felt a mix of anger and sadness that strong. I was sitting in my own bakery, something I had built from nothing, and they were all celebrating Ezra, not even bothering to tell me they wouldn't come. Not a single message of apology, just silence, and then that photo, like rubbing salt into the wound. I closed up that evening feeling hollow. As I was locking the door, my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Dad. For a split second, I thought maybe it was an apology, maybe an explanation. Instead, it read, "James, we need to discuss the bakery. Call me when you can." When I got that text from Dad, "James, we need to discuss the bakery," I just stood there staring at my phone like it was mocking me. The timing couldn't have been worse. I had just spent 12 hours on my feet, baking, smiling for customers, pretending not to notice the empty corner where my family should have been sitting. The last thing I wanted was to discuss anything with him. Still, I couldn't help myself. I've always been the one chasing after their approval. I told myself maybe, just maybe, this was his way of opening the door. Maybe he was going to finally acknowledge what I had done. I didn't call him right away. I cleaned up first, wiping down counters that were already spotless, stacking chairs that no one in my family had touched, wrapping up the special cake I'd made that no one had eaten. The place smelled of vanilla and butter, but to me it felt empty. On the walk home, I replayed the family photo in my head. Ezra beaming with that smug grin of his, Mom with her hand proudly on his shoulder, Dad looking like he'd just watched his son win the Nobel Prize. Clara was off to the side, but even she had a wide smile plastered on her face. They all looked so unified. And me? I was nowhere in sight. When I finally got home, I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand. I typed, "Sure, what's up?" and deleted it. Then I typed, "I had a good opening today," and deleted that too. In the end, I just wrote, "Okay." When? He replied within a minute. "Tomorrow evening. Come by the house." That was it. No congratulations. No, sorry we couldn't make it. Just a meeting request, like I was some employee being summoned to his office. The next day dragged on. I opened the bakery again, and thankfully, customers started trickling in. A few even came back from the day before, saying they loved the bread. That gave me a little spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this business could work. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was that conversation waiting for me at my parents' house. By the time I drove over there that evening, my stomach was in knots. Their house hasn't changed much since I was a kid. Same dark brick exterior, same neatly trimmed hedges, same creaky front gate. Walking up the path, I felt like I was 12 again, bracing myself for one of Dad's serious talks. Mom answered the door. She gave me a polite smile, but it wasn't warm. "James, you're here," she said, like I was a guest she hadn't been expecting. No hug. No "how's the bakery going?" Just a flat tone. Inside, I saw Clara sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone. Ezra was there too, of course, lounging in Dad's favorite chair with one leg crossed over the other, looking like he owned the place. He smirked when he saw me. "Well, if it isn't the man of the hour," Ezra said. "How's life in the cupcake business?" I bit down the urge to respond. I knew if I snapped back, it would only give him more material to use against me. Instead, I sat down at the table across from him. Dad came in a moment later, carrying a stack of papers. He didn't bother with small talk. He placed the papers on the table, sat down, and folded his hands. "James," he began, "your mother and I have been talking, and we think it's time we had an honest discussion about your bakery." That pause before the word bakery told me everything. He said it like it was a bad habit, like smoking or gambling. I leaned back in my chair. "All right," I said cautiously. "What about it?" He adjusted his glasses and slid one of the papers toward me. It was an article printout, something about small businesses failing within the first 5 years. "Look," he said, tapping the page, "statistics don't lie. Most bakeries go under. You've put yourself in a risky situation, and frankly, we're concerned about the financial implications. You need to be realistic." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the first thing he said to me about my bakery. No mention of the grand opening, no acknowledgement of how hard I'd worked, just statistics about failure. Ezra chuckled from his chair. "He's right, you know. It's cute that you want to play shopkeeper, but Dad's being generous giving you advice. You should listen." My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I'm not playing shopkeeper. I had a great turnout yesterday. Customers liked the food. This is something I've built from the ground up." Mom sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "We're not saying you haven't worked hard, James. But Ezra's promotion shows what stability looks like. He has a real career path. We just don't want you to throw away your future chasing a hobby." That word, hobby, hit me like a slap. After everything I'd done, they still saw it as some childish distraction. Clara finally chimed in, not even looking up from her phone. "Maybe if you listened to them, you wouldn't end up broke. Just saying." I looked at each of them, feeling a mix of rage and hurt. Then I turned back to Dad. "So why am I here? What exactly do you want to discuss?" That's when he dropped the bomb. "We think it would be wise if you let Ezra help oversee the financial side of your bakery," Dad said firmly. "He has experience with money. He could make sure you don't get in over your head. It would give us peace of mind." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. I stared at Dad, then at Ezra, who was smirking like a cat who'd already caught the mouse. "You want Ezra to run my bakery?" I asked slowly. Not run it, Dad said quickly. Just manage the important parts. Finances, planning, things you're not equipped to handle. You'd still bake, of course. Ezra leaned forward, grinning. Think of it this way, James. You do the fun part, kneading dough, frosting cupcakes. I'll handle the grown-up stuff. That way, everyone wins. Everyone except me. I sat there, my hands clenched under the table, trying not to let them see how much this was getting to me. My own family, who hadn't even shown up to support me, was now telling me I wasn't capable of running my own business and suggesting Ezra, of all people, swoop in and take control. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the papers Dad had pushed toward me and then at Ezra, whose grin had grown wider the longer I stayed silent. My mind was spinning. The bakery, the thing I had poured years of sweat, savings, and soul into, was being reduced to a project that Ezra would manage for my own good. Every instinct in me screamed no, but I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down, the same weight I'd carried my whole life. I don't think that's necessary, I finally said, my voice low but steady. I've managed the finances myself. I've got a business plan, I've done research, I've saved money for emergencies. I don't need Ezra overseeing anything. Dad's expression hardened, the kind of look I'd seen countless times growing up when I tried to argue with him. James, we're only looking out for you. It's not about control. It's about guidance. Ezra has a proven track record. You're passionate about baking, and we just want to make sure it doesn't fail. Ezra leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Look, little brother, I'm just offering help. You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but don't say I didn't offer. I know what it takes to make money, and right now, I'm not sure you do. I felt my chest tighten. Everything about this was familiar. Ezra talking down to me. Dad pretending it was for my own good. Mom silently approving while Clara nodded along. They had spent decades underestimating me, and now, even when I had proof that I could succeed, they were trying to put me in a box again. Do you even understand what you're saying? I asked, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I didn't just open this bakery yesterday. I've built this from nothing. I've put in the work, the money, the nights I didn't sleep. This isn't just a hobby. This is my life. Mom sighed again, like I was being dramatic. James, we understand that. But life isn't fair. You can't just expect everything to work out because you worked hard. Ezra is offering practical help. That's all. I looked at Ezra, whose smirk was now fully smug, like he had the upper hand. Practical help? I said slowly, my voice rising slightly. You mean taking over the parts I've been handling, so you can claim credit for any success, and I'll just bake the cupcakes? Ezra laughed, a light, condescending chuckle. You're making it sound so dramatic. I'm just trying to help. And honestly, James, you don't have to be so defensive. No one's taking your passion away. You'll still bake, but you're inexperienced. You'll make mistakes. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in on me. Every part of me wanted to explode, to shout, to throw the papers across the room, but I couldn't. Not yet. I had to stay calm. I had to think. I'll make mistakes. I repeated, my voice quieter, but with an edge. Ezra, I've already launched the bakery. Customers came. They liked it. They came back today. Do you know what that means? It means I can do this without you or anyone else telling me what to do. Dad's eyebrows furrowed, and I saw the shift in Mom's eyes. Concern, irritation, the same look they'd always given me when I dared challenge them. James, you're letting your pride get in the way. You need guidance. You've never been one to make practical decisions. I shook my head, feeling something break inside me. Years of being dismissed, ignored, and put down all at once. The grand opening, the hours, the customers, the smells of fresh bread still lingering in my clothes. None of it mattered to them. They only saw my lack of practicality. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, and spoke slowly, deliberately. Do you know why no one came to my opening yesterday? I asked, looking each of them in the eye. Because you all had something else to celebrate. Ezra's promotion. And you didn't even bother to tell me. Not one of you. You left me to close up the bakery alone. Do you understand how that feels? There was a brief silence. Clara finally put her phone down and looked at me, a flicker of guilt, or maybe annoyance, crossing her face. Ezra shrugged. Dad cleared his throat. Mom's expression didn't change much. It was a scheduling conflict. Mom said finally, in that tone that made it clear she thought I was overreacting. A conflict? I repeated incredulously. You mean you chose Ezra over me? You chose him and left me out. And now, after everything, you want to tell me I need his help running something I built myself? Ezra leaned forward this time, eyes glinting, his smile sharper. I think you're exaggerating. Everyone deserves a little guidance. You've done well, James, but don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. That's a dangerous combination in business. My blood was boiling, but I felt a strange calm overtake me. I realized then that this wasn't just about the bakery anymore. This was about respect, about finally showing them that I wasn't the kid they'd dismissed all my life. I picked up the papers Dad had laid out, looked at Ezra, and then at my parents. You're not helping, I said slowly. You're trying to control me. You're trying to take credit for something you had nothing to do with. And you can keep your guidance. I don't need it. Not from any of you. Dad's face darkened, and I could see Mom's frustration growing. Clara whispered under her breath, "He's being ridiculous." Ezra's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flash of surprise. I could see it in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to fight back like this. Then Dad leaned back, pinching the bridge of his nose, and said in that quiet, dangerous tone I knew all too well, "James, you're going to regret this. You think you're ready to run a business? You think you can handle everything on your own? You're young, naive, and stubborn. You don't realize how much you're risking. We were trying to protect you, and you." I cut him off, my voice steady and ice cold. Protect me? No. You were protecting yourselves. Making sure Ezra looks good, making sure I stay small, so you can control the narrative. That's not protection. That's manipulation. The room went silent. Even Clara looked shocked. Mom's jaw tightened. Ezra's eyes narrowed. I knew I had hit a nerve. I could feel the tension so thick it was suffocating. Then Dad slammed his hand on the table. That's enough, James. You're being ridiculous. You'll see soon enough that you can't do this alone. And when you fail, I stood up so quickly the chair screeched against the floor. I won't fail, I said, voice rising with conviction. And when I succeed, it won't be because of any of you. It will be because I believed in myself when no one else would. Ezra laughed, a hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. We'll see about that. And that's when I realized something terrifying and exciting at the same time. I was done playing their game. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I could feel it in my bones. I was going to prove them wrong. And not just a little. I was going to make them wish they'd never underestimated me. But before I could even begin plotting what that would look like, Mom's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with a small, satisfied smile. You might want to see this, she said, passing her phone across the table. I took it, my stomach dropping. On the screen was a notification from a local business blog I hadn't realized had covered small openings in town. There was a picture, my bakery, packed with customers, a line stretching down the street. But then my eyes went to the comments. There, at the very top, someone had left a comment that made my heart sink. Looks like someone's trying to compete with Ezra's franchise. Hope they know what they're doing. And that's when I realized my family wasn't done with me yet. Not by a long shot. I stared at the comment on the blog post, my hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from a sudden, burning clarity. My family had underestimated me for the last time. Ezra's smirk, Dad's condescending tone, Mom's "we know what's best" attitude. They had all been betting on me failing. And they didn't just think I couldn't run a bakery. They thought I wouldn't even try to stand up for myself. I set my phone down and looked around the room at my family. They were all watching me expectantly, waiting to see if I would fold. I didn't. I took a deep breath and felt a strange calm take over. For the first time in years, I wasn't pleading for approval or trying to win their respect. I was planning my next move. You know what? I said slowly, letting the words hang in the air. I don't need your help. I don't need your guidance. And I sure as hell don't need Ezra trying to take over what I built. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make this bakery succeed. On my own. And when I do, you'll see just how wrong you've been. Ezra leaned back, trying to hide a flicker of concern, but his eyes betrayed him. Bold words, he said, trying to sound confident. But bold words don't pay the bills, James. Numbers do. And that's why I'm offering my help. I laughed, quietly at first, then louder. Numbers? Let me tell you something about numbers. They only mean something if you have the guts to take the first step. I've already taken mine. You? You've just been sitting back, trying to control my life while pretending it's concern. Mom's face turned red, but she didn't interrupt. She never does when she's losing control, at least not verbally. Dad's hands clenched on the table, and Clara, who usually sided with Ezra without hesitation, looked a little unsure for the first time in years. I felt a surge of confidence. They had been trying to push me into a corner, but I was done cornering myself. I had to make them understand, not just with words, but by showing them, in a way they couldn't ignore. I spent the night at my apartment, pacing back and forth, thinking. Ezra and my parents thought they could insert themselves into my business and take control. They had no idea how careful I'd been. Every detail, every transaction, every recipe, they were mine. They had no leverage. But leverage wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a statement. A lesson they wouldn't forget. I started planning carefully. First, I documented everything. The grand opening, the customers' names, the positive reviews, even the blog post comment. I made sure there were receipts, photos, social media posts. Everything was traceable. Then I began thinking about the one area they'd always tried to exploit: money. My parents had always pushed the narrative that I was irresponsible, that I couldn't handle finances. If I could prove them wrong in the most public way possible, it would sting. The next morning, I opened the bakery with renewed energy. I made sure the place was spotless, the pastries perfect, and the coffee fresh. I was no longer just baking for customers. I was baking with purpose. Every loaf of bread, every slice of cake, every croissant was a statement. I can do this. I am doing this. As the day went on, I started reaching out to local businesses, sending samples, and inviting them to come in and try the bakery. I wasn't just doing networking. I was creating a web of connections that would make the bakery impossible for my family to ignore. By late afternoon, I had 3 local cafes agreeing to carry some of my pastries, and a catering company interested in having me handle desserts for events. Meanwhile, I kept an eye on the family group chat. Naturally, Ezra had already posted a smug update about his latest work victory. Mom commented something supportive, and Clara sent a thumbs up. I didn't respond. Not yet. Patience was part of the plan. That evening, I received another text from Dad. "We're disappointed, James. We think you're making a mistake. Call us." I stared at it for a long time, then smiled. I didn't respond. I had no intention of responding, not until I was ready. They wanted to control me, but now I was in control of how and when they would see my success. The next week was intense. I was in the bakery almost constantly, testing new recipes, perfecting old ones, and making connections in the community. Each day, I gained confidence. Every positive comment from a customer, every compliment, every repeat visit built the armor I'd been lacking for so long. Then came the day that made me realize I had my first real opportunity for payback. A local food magazine that had been covering small businesses in town reached out. They wanted to feature Morning Rise in an upcoming issue, highlighting unique bakeries that had opened despite challenges. This was huge. The feature would be online and in print, reaching hundreds of thousands of people, more exposure than I could have imagined. I called the magazine editor, explained my story, and scheduled a time for them to visit the bakery. As soon as I hung up, I felt a thrill run through me. This was the perfect opportunity. The article would show my family, and everyone else, that I wasn't a child playing shopkeeper. I was a legitimate business owner, and the recognition would make them squirm. Over the next few days, I prepared for the visit meticulously. I cleaned the bakery top to bottom, rehearsed the story I would tell, made sure the pastries looked perfect for photos. I even made a special cake, elegantly decorated, for the editor to photograph. Everything had to be flawless. Then, on the day of the magazine shoot, I noticed something odd. Ezra had somehow gotten wind of it. I didn't know if Mom or Dad had mentioned it to him, or if he had some sneaky way of finding out. But suddenly, there he was, walking down the street toward the bakery, dressed in his usual crisp suit, looking as if he had arrived to claim territory. My heart pounded, but I didn't let him in. I knew he would try to overshadow me, to insert himself into the story. I blocked the door politely and explained that the visit was private, that it had been scheduled in advance. He raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed, but he left without making a scene. This time, after the editor arrived, the shoot went flawlessly. I told my story, showing the process, the ingredients, the techniques, and the passion that went into every item. The editor was impressed, asking questions, taking photos, and even posting live snippets to their social media. By the end of the day, Morning Rise was trending locally. That evening, I checked the family group chat. Of course, Ezra had already posted a photo from his day at work, but there was no mention of the bakery. No congratulations, no acknowledgement. My parents had stayed silent. Clara, as usual, had nothing to say. But then, a comment came from one of my mother's acquaintances who apparently followed the local business scene. James, your bakery is getting a lot of attention. Looks like you're really onto something. I could practically hear the tension through the screen. I knew my family would see it soon enough. And when they did, they wouldn't know how to respond. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. The first move had been made, and I was already feeling the thrill of the game. That night, as I was closing up the bakery, my phone buzzed again. Dad. James, it read, we need to talk. Urgent. Call now. I looked at the message, then at the bakery around me. I knew what was coming. They weren't done trying to control me. They were going to push harder, manipulate, guilt, maybe even try to interfere with my business. But this time, I wasn't scared. I set my phone down, took a deep breath, and smiled. The next morning, I woke up early, determined to push things forward. The bakery was already trending online, and the magazine feature was scheduled to be released that week. I knew I had one clear objective: turn the tables on my family in a way they couldn't ignore, couldn't twist into a victory for Ezra, and couldn't spin as anything other than my undeniable success. I started by expanding my reach in the community. I met with local cafe owners, small restaurant managers, and event coordinators. By midweek, I had secured several contracts: my pastries in 3 cafes, a local deli, and my first wedding catering gig. Each deal I closed, I documented meticulously, taking photos, saving emails, and tracking every detail. This wasn't just business, it was ammunition. Meanwhile, my parents and Ezra continued their usual behavior. Ezra posted another update about his work, subtly bragging about a bonus he received. Mom commented with what she thought was an encouraging remark, and Clara sent the standard thumbs-up emoji. None of them acknowledged the bakery. I didn't expect them to. They had spent years ignoring my achievements unless they could twist them into a story about me, not being practical, or Ezra being the better sibling. Then the magazine published the feature online. It was more than I'd hoped for. A full page with vibrant photos of morning rise, highlighting the pastries, the decor, and my story of opening the bakery despite the odds. The comments section was flooded with praise. Customers were tagging friends, sharing the post, and asking when they could come in. I knew this was the moment to strike. I sent the link to the family group chat with a short, precise message. The bakery is officially featured in the local magazine. Feel free to check it out. I didn't wait for them to respond. I watched the notification bubble in the chat. Within minutes, Dad responded, his tone stiff. James, this isn't a game. You need to let Ezra help before you make a mistake. Mom followed. We're worried about your decisions. You're risking too much. Clara, I don't know why you insist on doing this alone. Just be careful. And then Ezra, his condescending smirk almost audible through text. You might have had some luck, but we'll see if it lasts. Don't overestimate yourself. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the proof was already out there, and it was undeniable. The following weekend, I held a community tasting event at the bakery. I invited everyone who had supported me so far, the local cafe owners, neighbors, and some press contacts from the magazine. The place was packed. People were taking photos, asking questions, and genuinely enjoying the pastries. For the first time, I saw what I had built reflected in the faces of others: respect, admiration, and excitement. As if on cue, the family showed up. Not invited, of course. They just appeared, curious to see what I had been doing. Ezra walked in with that same smug grin, clearly expecting the bakery to be mediocre. Dad's expression was cautious, Mom's measured, and Clara looked like she wasn't sure if she wanted to be impressed or annoyed. I greeted them politely, keeping my tone neutral. Welcome, I said. Feel free to look around. Ezra's eyes scanned the room. He stopped mid-step when he saw the line of people waiting outside. This is a lot, he muttered, clearly unsettled. Dad cleared his throat. James, we didn't realize. I interrupted, calm and measured. You knew exactly what this would look like. You just didn't think I could pull it off. Mom's jaw tightened. Clara's expression shifted to unease. Ezra, for the first time, looked genuinely uncomfortable. He was out of his element. I led them to the display case, showcasing the pastries. I pointed out the orders already placed, the contracts secured, and the feature in the magazine. All of this happened while you were choosing to ignore me and support Ezra. And yes, I did it on my own. Ezra opened his mouth, probably to say something smug, but he didn't get the chance. A regular customer, someone who had been in the line outside for over an hour, came up. "Excuse me," she said, looking at Ezra and Dad. "Are you with the bakery?" Ezra hesitated. No, we're just visiting." The woman shook her head. "Well, because this place is amazing, I thought maybe you were the owners. But clearly, James is running things. You should be proud of him." The words hit like a hammer. I could see the color drain from Ezra's face. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Mom's tight-lipped smile faltered. Clara looked away, embarrassed. I took a deep breath, feeling a satisfaction I had never felt before. "You see," I said softly, so only they could hear, "this is my success. Not Ezra's. Not yours. Mine. And it's not because I needed your approval or interference." The family stayed for a few more minutes, watching quietly as I interacted with customers, taking orders, explaining pastries, and answering questions with confidence and warmth. Every interaction was a reminder that I had built something real, something they couldn't take away, and something they couldn't control. Finally, they left. Not a word of congratulations, not a single acknowledgement of what I had accomplished. They didn't even look at me. But I didn't care. I had proven my point. I had not only survived their neglect and condescension, I had thrived. Morning Rise was packed, the magazine feature brought attention, and contracts were coming in faster than I could have imagined. That night, I locked up the bakery, exhausted but exhilarated. I checked my phone. No messages from them. No attempts to intervene. Nothing. And I realized something. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their approval. I had everything I had ever wanted: a successful business, respect from my community, and the satisfaction of showing them exactly what they had underestimated. Ezra, he was furious, though he would never admit it. Dad and Mom, still obsessed with control, still trying to manipulate, but powerless now. Clara, probably still wondering why I refused to let them in, but too late to change anything. I poured myself a cup of coffee, leaned back, and smiled. Morning Rise was no longer just a dream. It was a triumph. And this time, no one, not my family, not Ezra, not anyone, was going to take it from me. I didn't forgive them. I didn't soften. I simply moved forward, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. And for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged in my own life. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. If you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.